like 5 minutes.
Robert said we were. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular scheduled town council workshop, February 24th, 2026. I hereby open the meeting. It is 6 p.m. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Tanya to tell us about our town square restrooms.
Good evening, everyone. I hope that you can hear me, and I'd like to say thank you so much for attending the meeting this evening. We've had many workshops over the last 10 months or so relative to the town square restrooms. What we have ended up with is 4 concepts that were previewed at a public information meeting last week. During that meeting, we went over the 4 options. Option number 1 was a much larger, much grander men's and women's restroom concept with wing walls for storage and janitorial closets and a family restroom. This was similar to what had been proposed for behind Town Hall and had just been moved over next to the library. So that was option number 1. Option number 2 became a much larger format for pod style restrooms. And in pod style restrooms, you could have men's, women's, you could have unisex, you could have family, but they'd be individual pod restrooms. Or you could have just men's and women's versions as well. But this was a much larger concept than I think we were anticipating for a pod style restroom. So, really, what it boiled down to is option number 3 and option number 4. So option number 3 was a scaled straight line linear version of a pod style restroom. And this was done by a resident who was able to draw this. And we also have a GIS version that he did that was just a little bit different. It didn't have that janitorial closet on the end. He kind of moved that into alignment with the other 4 stalls. So that's what we call a pod concept. And then option number 4 was a scaled down version of option number 1. So it was a men's and women's side restroom. And then it had a family room concept in the front. Again, but just much more scaled down than option number 1. At last week's meeting, what we heard from members of the public that attended that was that they really favored option number 4, having a men's and women's side separate, but they thought that you might be able to add 1 additional urinal to the men's side and 1 additional toilet to the women's side. And they thought this might be a complementary restroom style for the town square property. In addition, there was discussion about whether we would add a janitorial closet to the back behind those ADA stalls that would be accessed by the public works team from the outside, not from the inside of the restrooms. So that is kind of where we ended up after the last meeting. So this evening, what we're hoping to do is finalize which restroom concept, we would like to move forward with. Obviously, once we can decide on that, we'll move forward to the 30, 60, 90 plans and bring those forward, and we can get into more of the details about wall structures, fixtures, and things like that. But tonight, we want to know if the fixture counts are accurate and which style, 3 or 4, you'd really like us to move forward with. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Fitzgibbon so he can kind of give you an idea of what these 2 restrooms, concept number 3 and concept number 4, looked like when we had Kimley Horn place them into site plans. So John, if you would, please.
Do you want to scroll to the site plans then?
Yes. Keep going, Robert. They're the last 2 pages. Yep.
So as we talked in the workshop, this is actually option number 4 laid out. We have actually come up with varying concepts. Again, like we said in the workshop or in the public hearing, it's a little premature on the sidewalk plans. These probably will most likely be massaged, obviously, once we determine what the program is. Kind of a little bit out of sequence. We would, having met with some of the residents, we probably change the sidewalk concept a little bit. But what it does is it kind of shows you the relationship of the restrooms to the library. And I think that's what we should focus on more than anything, than how we lead up to it from the parking on the backside. So if you could scroll down, Robert, to the other one. So this one you can see we line up directly. Both restroom concepts would line up structurally the building with the structure of the front of the library, and then the overhang would tie within the porch as far as the alignment of the site plan. Um, we've determined both concepts do have ample space for the future septic systems that will be required, as well as tie into the existing water main that used to feed the old community room. So both concepts seem to work. I think there's probably a little more impact on the one that's more linear, which is closer to the oak tree. That would be the previous concept plan for the pods, just because of the linear nature of it. And we may look at maybe shifting that off of the back of the building or off of the face of the library a little bit more, just to avoid root intrusion into the tree. We do have a fairly large oak tree there that we want to be cognizant of. So, anyways, again, these are the two ways that both of those designs work. I think one of the things that came up, or a couple of things that came up in our last uh, town public hearing, was that I think there were some folks that didn't really like having men and women in the same restroom. Then also looking at potential throughput. Obviously, having a separation of men's and women's restrooms, you have a much better throughput. Um, Men obviously don't take as long, and so it just becomes a more efficient design as far as throughput is concerned. So, and then obviously the one that Tanya had, which was option number 4, is expandable. Um, with an additional 3 to 5 feet on the building, we get 2 toilet fixtures that we can add. I think the most important thing for us to come out of tonight for the council members is concept. Do we want to have separate men's and women's, or do we want to have the pod style? That's the big number one. And then secondly is number of fixtures. Number of fixtures are driven by a number of things, not just feel, touch, and I think we should only have 3. It is based on understanding code. We're not bound by that, I don't believe, but it's really about what is right specifically for the town events that we have. So if we could all come away tonight knowing one family restroom and X number of fixtures, and we want men's and women's, or do we want pod design, I think would be very helpful for town staff to actually move forward. So with that, I leave it to discussion and carry on.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Um, let's open it up. Do we have any public comment on this before council kind of weighs in on their opinions? Anybody raise their hand? All right, Miss Molly Rose, you have the floor.
Hi, I just want to make sure that I sent an email not too long ago, and I just want to make sure everybody got it because in the meeting I was in, there was a little bit different discussion than the last one, I guess, but I wasn't at the last one. So I just want
Yeah,
to make sure everybody got my comments and then you can go on.
I did. I'm assuming everybody else did as well. I did see them.
Okay.
Yes, yes, we
I
got them.
believe, Tanya, if I'm not mistaken, they're actually part of this agenda package.
Partially, there were more details in her email.
Yeah,
sorry.
because the first one, because what was in the agenda was just after I looked at the first 2 designs that were posted, I don't know, a month or 2 ago, and I thought they were overkill. And then Stephen came out with another design, and I like that one, but it didn't get mentioned. So that's why I wrote it in. I do like the unisex. I think that's all we need.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
You. Anybody else? All right, council. Comments? Miss David. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have some questions and then some comments. My first question is structurally, and I guess this would be for John. Piping wise, what bathrooms are make more sense. And here's my question, or here's my reason, here's my comment that goes with that question. I don't know how much council and residents are down in the downtown using the admin building as much as I am. I'm there every Friday. And we've been having issues with people not having respect for our bathrooms. And because I have classes in there for 2 hours, I frequent those bathrooms, and we've had some issues the last couple of weeks where my class can't even use the bathrooms because we're having to fix them because somebody has stuffed something down the toilets that they shouldn't. So I guess the reason my question is I want to know the difference between the design of the pods and the men's and women's, the piping issues, which one is better? That's my first question.
Okay, well, first of all, neither design is better than one or the other. It's really the sizing of the pipes and the laterals going to the septic. In
Okay.
addition to that, with it being a public restroom and having built thousands of restrooms for Universal Studios, I think what we would probably do is specify assisted flush toilets, which are high vacuum, high power toilets,
Okay.
that actually overcome some of that.
Okay. Because I know that
It was never intended that, the town facility restrooms would become the public restrooms for food market
totally
and other
understand.
things.
And my recommendation to Lillian was lock the doors because this is ridiculous. But that was the other thing I was going to ask is how much upkeep is this going to cost us and which would be the more fiscal responsible way. But if you're going to do the higher flushing toilets and all of that, that makes me feel better because like I said, it's been the last 2 weeks for sure. And then we've had issues in the past. So just it's a shame we don't have respect for public bathrooms, and so I'm hesitant even this whole project because of that, but but we're moving forward.
Yes, and in a 1,000 room hotel like the Royal Pacific, the biggest issue you ever have is clogged toilets in hotel rooms.
Yep.
And so we always want to use the power assisted flush and make sure that the lines are a little bit oversized, especially when you're in public. So anyways, that will be part of the final design.
And then my second question, and then I'll be done and I'll be quiet. um for the amount of activities and events that we have downtown, um is a 4 bathroom pod feasible versus having men's and women's? Because I'm kind of on the fence for both for my opinion, but I just kind of want to know because it looks like there would be more toilets with the other bathroom versus the pods. So I'm just what is the code and which one would help us make that code?
First of all, the town is not necessarily bound by code. Obviously, before we had two men's and women's restrooms, and that's all we were servicing. It's really about more conceptually and pragmatically when you look at our events that we have with Holiday Hoopla and the food trucks and things that the town run, and that's really what we're trying to base the basis of our design. Um, when we did, when we looked at the pavilion, we assumed that we would have a crowd of about 300 to 400 people. It left us with a certain number of fixture count. I believe it was 7 in the women's side, and I think it was 4 on the men's side, each one requiring 2 sinks. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do that. Um, we didn't end up with that number of fixtures, especially on the women's side, but we ended up with 2 family restrooms. So it's a tricky question. It's really something that, in my opinion, the more fixtures you have, the better you're off. And what I don't want to do is build a sinking ship that we have a 300-person event or a food truck and we're still bringing in portalets. It's a cost to the town when we have an opportunity to add a fixture for virtually nothing at this point. So I would just say size it appropriately, get the right amount of throughput, and the design of the men's, women's, and family restroom is really the most pragmatic and practical throughput, flow, and also maintenance, because we just would leave the family restroom open during the week, closed and lock the other ones.
Okay, thank you very much. That helps. Thank you.
Hey, Mandy. I asked the same question earlier today, um, about how many portalets were we getting for food truck? And I know
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to design for our events or anything like that, but I was very curious on how many. We have three. Were we getting any more? I was told Lillian has not been ordering any extras. But I haven't been to a food truck and say three was enough for a basic food truck event. So I haven't been to a food truck in a while, probably
Right.
last fall. But as far as I know, Lillian lately has not been getting any extras. So the three
And
we have permanently or the three we've been, that's what they're going with.
and no issues with, complaints of not enough
I
bathrooms or anything like
I
that.
don't know. I
Okay.
can't answer that. So because I haven't been to the last three food trucks.
Right.
So
See,
that was the first one I
I
did.
won't use those portlets. I'll drive home before I use a porta potty. So,
All righty.
um, okay, cool. Thanks.
All right. And Councilperson Haynes.
Yeah, so a couple things. To piggyback off of some of the stuff that Mandy said, we have meetings, committee meetings, and I have garden club, and we were at the town offices, and we had similar issues with the bathrooms in the hallway. So, I appreciate the idea of, the bigger pipes, to help with that. But my concern is that a couple things. So if we go with option four and, the public not respecting is the public not respecting, it is what it is. And so if we have a problem with the women's restroom because of somebody stuffing something down a pipe or just, the kind of things that may get flushed in a women's restroom, that then we're going to have the whole women's restroom side shut down. And then we have one stall in the front, even at an event, or the men's side. So I think the same concerns still exist for that design, that anytime something happens, we've got to wait for somebody to fix that. When I was there for the garden club, stuff was coming out onto the floors, and I know Tanya got right on it, and even had the guys come over and had the plumber on the way and whatever. But it was still happening in the now, and then there was no other alternative for bathrooms at that point. So my concern would be at a big event, we could have similar issues. Um,
Hey, Brandy, let me just address that just so we're all on the same page, regardless of whether we go with the pod style or we go with the other style. If a lateral gets backed up, we have one lateral feeding the entire bathroom facility. So both men's and women's would be down, or all four pods would be down in that scenario, which is why pipe size and power assisted flush is important for this type of thing. So that is not a design thing. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on that.
mhm.
It
I
doesn't matter
understand.
what design you pick.
Hmm.
If the main gets clogged, it's going to affect all bathrooms.
Right. But if I could finish. So when you have the quad bathrooms, I understand there's a lateral, but if the clog is at number one in the line and you've got number two, three, and four, they may or may not be affected depending on where that clog is. If it's right in the drain, right underneath the seal. So not always the case, but I understand what you're saying. My other concern is that if we have any kind of issues where stuff is, coming up in the bathrooms, it's easier to hose out and clean the pod style. In terms of line of sight, because that was discussed at a lot of previous meetings, I think either sort of work for line of sight. Once people are entering the other bathrooms, once they're through the front door, you can't see the rest of the line of sight in terms of some of the concerns for parents, for children. But both I've looked at them from all different angles of the yard once it was staked out, and there's at least line of sight to the front doors. One of the conversations I had out on site was with Vicky from Tree Board, and we had talked about, that the bathroom could actually be, if it was the linear pod version, that it could be oriented to face the brewery. You would still have blockage from the Forest Street side with shrubbery and everything else, and you would still have the same line of sight, whether you were over by the basketball courts, the town hall porch, or the other yard. So you could technically turn that one and orient it at 90 degrees. Um, my other concern is that we're still saying that if we build these bathrooms and we have the quad style, pod style, whatever you want to call it, that they would be unlocked, except for at night, I'm assuming, because that's what all the conversations have been discussed. But if we have this large one, we're going to have the one stall in front that's unlocked all the time, which is unisex. And then we're going to have the men's and the ladies' rooms, and we're only going to open it for events. Food trucks, holiday hoopla, Run Among the Lakes, the various events that we have in town. And I think that's a huge expense at the taxpayers' cost to build for the majority of that facility to only be open, 2 dozen times, maybe 3 dozen times a year. And then we're relying on that one stall in the front. So that would be my concern with that one. Now, some other things that I've looked into since the last meeting last week was from conversations with the resident who was telling me a little bit about people who live down in Celebration and some other places that they've lived in the past where bathrooms have had a access card similar to what council members and staff get to get into the admin building and the public works building. So I did reach out to our finance director, Tara, and spoke with her today to find out how much that system cost and if that's something that we could look into for any of the bathrooms, whether it be the quad style, having the 4 pods, or the other style that at least residents could have access all the time. So depending on what we pick, that's something I think we might want to consider because I don't want to see us spending $500,000, 493, I guess, is what we approved for bathrooms that aren't going to get to be used by the residents. It's a big expense to not be utilized more than 25 days a year or whatever. The other thing I wanted to mention too is, I'm glad Molly was at the meeting we had at the end of January, along with some other residents. And I also wanted to see if council had got the emails with the information that I had Dorothy send out because, with the information that was presented tonight, we talked about what happened at the last meeting, the last public input workshop. But we did have another public input workshop where we had, a handful of people on, and I provided comments from residents that had all said their interest in option 3. So I just want to make sure that, council saw that as well, because there's a lot of positive feedback I've been getting for option number 3. So.
Okay. Thank you, Councilperson Haynes. Before I call on you, Tony, Tanya, the quad bathrooms, they're not all 4 going to be open all the time, correct? That we're going to only leave one open?
Are you talking about the pod style?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. There was conversations about not leaving all of those open as well and just maybe leaving a couple of unisex open, things like that. But I don't think there had been a concrete decision on what you might do with those. But yes, there was conversation about the fact that not all the pods needed to be unlocked. Some of them could be locked as well.
Okay, which would cut back. So essentially, from my perspective, design 4, we've got the one family that's open all the time. We're going to pretty much do the same thing with the pods, is leave one unisex open all the time. Essentially, is what I'm guessing.
That was
Am I-
discussed, yes.
Okay. All right. Tony, you're up, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor-elect. Just a quick question, Tanya. So what kind of maintenance issues do we have down at the rec center as far as public access for those?
Oh, at Windermere Recreation Center?
Yes, ma'am.
We have more of the issue of people flushing them with their feet and breaking the flushers and things like that there, more than anything else from a maintenance perspective, not keeping them very clean. That's an issue. So we have those types of issues. We've had an issue once or twice where the water system for the flushing of the toilets went down, but we had to get that taken care of. So for the most part, I don't get that many maintenance calls or requests relative to that other than the handles getting broken because people are not using their hands to flush them, they're using their feet.
Yeah, so that's kind of the experience I've had with large scale installations as well. One of the things, John, that I was thinking. First of all, I'm a fan of a modified plan number 4. I do think we need to adjust the fixture counts. The building codes generate those fixture count requirements based on a reason. What we need to do is figure out how big of an event we're going to support. I think it's appropriate for us to support a 350 person event, and we need to use the building code fixture counts for that. The way we get there is by going to the option number 4. The other thing option number 4 does is it saves money. That's a very efficient construction layout that will save money in the long run. Not only efficient with dollars, but efficient with building, efficient with the use of our funds. One of the things I want to remind everybody is just because this was programmed at $490,000 doesn't mean we have to spend it all. We still have the town hall phases 2 and 3 to do. And I think we should apply the savings on this project to those projects so we can push those forward. Those are my thoughts, Mayor. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I did have a question for John on the 2 different designs. Um, co is either one more cost efficient to build? The second was in the beginning, we discussed putting climate control in these things. And what would that look like if we went to a pod system versus the men's and women's, where we could have one unit that runs the length of the building and feed it that way? For longevity is the reason we talked about the putting HVAC in it.
Yeah, obviously it's more efficient with a split system to do one building that has both men's and women's, because you could split it, air condition both units. That certainly is more cost effective. I don't know as though I would even recommend, if we're going to do individual pods, that we would air condition those. I hate to say that, but that brings a little bit, because you can't use split units at that point. You literally have to do a fan coil, inducted units that actually feed each individual pod.
That's what I was guessing we would have to do if we went with the pod version.
And I'm sorry, Tony. I'm sorry, Andy, what was your first question?
Uh, Cost on the 2.
I mean that's hard.
I
Obviously,
know.
sharing chases and everything else. The only thing I can say is that, when you're looking at restroom design, your square foot cost is anywhere from, $7 to $850,000 a square foot. Um, I think that the pods are a little bit bigger in square footage, but if we're going to add, you know, um, a couple additional fixtures into the option 4 design, we start getting to about the same square footage. I think that the plumbing and everything else in the men's, women's option 4 is easier, because you end up with one lateral hitting everything coming out the back end, versus spreading everything out. You got more water lines, you got more plumbing, you do
Okay.
have more things associated with the spread out versus the consistency of standard restroom design.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Tony?
Just a clarification, Andy, John, he said it was 750,000 to 800,000 a square foot. That's a little high.
Yeah.
How about 750 to $800 a square
Yeah,
foot?
that's
Got
what
it.
I apologize for that.
No worries.
I was
Yeah.
I was talking megabytes, not kilobytes.
No
That
worries.
was my deal.
I got it.
Yeah.
No
The
worries.
second thing is that, obviously maintainability, you build a center line chase down the option 4 road, and it's a lot easier to maintain. So if we do have issues long term with piping and need to replace that, it's going to be a more more easily accessible and easily repairable situation versus the pods.
All righty. Thank you, sir. Councilpersons David.
Thank
Yes,
you. I
ma'am.
have one more question. Clarification, John, you mentioned that the pods would encroach onto an oak tree where the option 4 would not. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, so if Robert, can you scroll down so you guys see that before, I'm sorry. So see the oak tree right up, keep going north. Oh, yeah, right there, just a little farther
Yes.
east. So there's a large oak tree that's there. Um, the and like I was saying, to be fair and equitable, architecturally it makes sense for the facades to line up with the library. We
Right.
could shift that a little bit farther to the west if we had to. But if you look at the other design, scroll down, Robert, we stay away more from the tree roots in that design.
Right.
And we have less limb impact. Um, I don't know if we should make our decision based on that. I think,
No, I
yeah,
no, I
but
do
it
like
is,
the
but it
look.
is a point, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my biggest thing is I do like the look of 4 by the library versus the pods because I feel like it doesn't look aligned. It doesn't flow like the library does, like the option 4. So I mean, in my opinion, I like the option 4. That was the consensus in most of the residents in the last meeting as well. Um, as long as keeping it clean and keeping the upkeep, the maintenance on it is not any more or less than I would say, or any more than the pods, I would say the option 4 would be my preference.
Okay, thank you. Councilperson Stroop, do you have anything you want to add? Okay. I don't think he can hear me. Um, any other public comment?
Randy, can you hear
There he is.
me
Hey,
now?
buddy. Yeah, hey, sir. Good evening.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Sorry about that.
We'll blame
I'm in my
Verizon.
truck. Sorry. Yeah, option 4 definitely. Uh, yes, option 4 definitely for me. Um, I like to go with what the residents want, and it sounds like that's what they want the most. I'm really not in favor of more urinals and toilets, but John's the expert on this one, so I'll concede that also. So I say option 4, 2 more fixtures, and let's get going.
All righty, thank you. Uh, let's see. Councilperson
Thank
Haynes,
you.
your preference? Thank you, sir.
My preference is for 3, unless with 4 we have some sort of card access
Thank
system
you.
for those. Sorry. My vote is for 3 unless it was option 4 with some sort of access to the bathrooms on a regular basis for residents.
Gotcha. So the one family restroom's not going to be enough for you?
It's
That's
just
in
the
4?
feedback that we had from anybody for any of it, whether it's option 3 or 4, is that we still had a lot of feedback where women wanted a women's and men wanted a men's.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, with only one of the things we said at the last public input workshop, and I'm not sure who was on that one, but was that, if we had 2 pods on the left side or something, that then we could have a men's and a women's that are open all the time. Because, I'm like all the other women. You go in some of these unisex restrooms, they're pretty nasty. I don't use them. They're about equivalent to a portalette sometimes. So, I don't have a problem with option 4. But I just want, if we're spending taxpayer dollars to build it, that it's something that the residents can use all the time. And if the goal is to have that be a men's and women's available to the residents on a regular basis, then let's give them that access. So if it's option 4, I like the idea of doing some sort of cat card system. Um, I'm sorry, I call it a cat card because I used to work for the government, but the card system to allow residents to get into it, similar to everything else we do. Tennis courts, we have a key, boat ramps, we have either a
Okay,
code or whatever. So, something that would give the residents, better access than 20 days a year if we go with option 4.
gotcha. All right. Councilperson David?
Yeah, I don't, I like, option 4, and I'm not opposed to having like a keypad where residents can pop in a code. And I mean, I don't think that we need to leave them unlocked for sure, all of them, but I mean, I'm okay with, having something where residents can access a little more often than just just the family bathroom. But I definitely think option 4 is the best way to go.
Okay. And Councilperson Davitt?
Yeah, option 4 all the way, but let's make sure we get the fixture count right.
Okay, absolutely. All righty. Miss Tanya, anything else? Do you think you got a direction?
I do. Thank you very much.
All righty. Wonderful. Well, is there anything else for the good of the order that anybody needs to bring up this evening?
I think the only comment that I would have as representing the engineering and trying to get this done, I heard get the fixture count right. Do we think that adding an additional urinal, an additional toilet to the women's room, adding 3 feet to the building is the right direction? And then we can obviously add keypads to the doors. And Brandy, that's a good idea. I mean, I think whenever we get all our heads together, we come up with a great design. And so that could obviously be incorporated into the design. At the end of the day, we're trying to come out of this workshop with clear direction, but I know ultimately I think we're going to have to vote on it, correct?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. We'll still have to
So,
go to council for it.
yeah. So as I leave this group of powerful people, just think about the number of fixtures. And then at the next council meeting, if you say option 4, add a urinal and a toilet, that's all we're looking for is love, pure direction that just allows us to do our thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tony?
Yeah, I was going to ask a question, Andy. Is everybody comfortable with the design capacity of 300 people? Because that'll drive the fixture count. I think that's a good round number that John could go design from.
I mean, I'm okay with it in concept. My only thing is that I know, and I don't know what other council members know because I've had several conversations with Tanya and Stephen and everybody. So, like, for this particular drawing that they did the site plan for and whatever, I know the sizes are still a little bit off because, there was discussion that we have to add 18 inches here to this wall and 18 inches to this wall behind the door for the ADA access and whatever. So I'd be more comfortable saying add the extra fixtures once these numbers are a little bit more tweaked because they're still a little bit rudimentary for option 4. Um, and if you're adding 18 inches here, 18 inches here, that is 3 feet in whichever direction. And then there were a couple other places, but it's all been discussed, but I haven't seen anything on paper. So
Okay.
that would be my only kind of hesitation. But if we have slightly more accurate numbers with those ADA handicap accessibility things shown at the council meeting in March, then I think I could feel more comfortable. So, maybe if they have that one with the appropriate dimensions and then what it would literally add for the other fixtures, then yeah. But I
Okay.
Yeah,
want to
but
see
the
both.
the
You're good
fixture
for
count will
300.
drop. The program is driven by the fixture count. The fixture count is driven by the number of people that it's supposed to support. So, I mean, we got to go down that
I mean,
design
I don't,
line.
so I go to every event in town, literally, probably except Run Among the Lakes. So 300 is probably pretty aggressive. I mean, I mean, maybe we have 300 for Holiday Hoopla. I mean, we
Oh,
do get a
we
lot for Wine and Dine, I know. So I talked with, I don't know if you guys, which meeting you guys were on, but I talked with Stephen Lewis, who's on the West Orange Chamber, who kind of took over, the Wine and Dine stuff sorry, CT Allen. And so he said, like, for example, this year at Wine and Dine, which I think is probably our biggest event, I don't think a lot of people used the portalettes. I mean, some did, but we had the town hall bathrooms open. So there were two bathrooms inside town hall, and they had gotten the fancy style bathroom to park in the yard by the library, and they had three individual units in it. And the feedback I got from Stephen was that 3 units probably wasn't enough, but he would have been good with four. So that
Okay.
would have been four fixtured facilities plus the two inside town hall. So if town hall's open in that situation, there's six units basically, right? And so at Holiday Hoopla and the actual town sponsored events, we do have town hall open. Now, when we have food trucks, we're not going to have town hall open, so we will have less. But I feel like if we had six total outside, that if that's sufficient for wine and dine, I feel like that's our biggest event.
Yeah. Hoopla normally runs around 600 to 700, if not
Right.
more.
I
It's
think they
it's
said,
pretty
is it
close.
wine and dine like 1,200 or 1,500 or something? I think that's what
No,
Stephen
no,
told.
it's not that big. It's like 900 tickets.
Okay, so so if with that six units would be sufficient without really any kind of a line. Stephen said because he kept checking, and that there was never more than two, maybe three people in line at most with the 3 units outside.
Yeah.
So 6 units I think covers us, and then if town hall is open, we have the plan. Once we finish the town hall design, we have one extra bathroom in town hall, which gives us three inside. So I think six can do it. Eight may or may
I
not be better.
yeah.
I wouldn't want to see the building get too big, I guess. I don't want it to,
Nope.
overpower the area.
All right. Nobody wants it to get too big, that's for sure. I
Right.
think Tony, you're right. What does the count look like for 300? I think that's a good barometer on it of going, okay, if 300 says it's six or seven fixtures, three and three, and then the family, then that's what we go with. If 300 says we need nine, I think that's where somebody may have a question about it. But I agree. I think you run it with an event, a number of a capacity number. I think you're
Right.
right on point on that.
I agree as well. I think I'm comfortable with the 300 number.
Okay. All right, John, does that give you direction on count number?
It does. I think what I would look at is look at the number of toilets that we do have in the town hall. And then also having a family restroom does help buffer the count a little bit by 67%.
Okay.
Uh, and so I think if I'm hearing what you guys are saying for 300, I would
Mm-hmm.
take this design, add 3 feet to the building, which is nothing. I'd add an additional urinal, an additional toilet, and then not build a sinking ship.
Okay.
That's kind of my recommendation as an engineer and understanding building restrooms. Tony and I built a multitude of restrooms. So, um, if I could give any clarity to you guys, if I'm hearing you right, option 4 is good.
Yes.
Expand the building 3 feet, add a urinal and a toilet,
Yes.
and moveon.org.
Yes, sir.
But that'll all be voted on, so we won't do anything until we get to the council meeting, and then you
Yep.
guys can have a little more dialogue on it. But food for thought as you guys approach the next council meeting.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you, Mr. John. Anything else from anybody? All right. With that being said, I it is 6:44. I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.